He didn't mean to stop. Elias Cormac had walked the observation ring twice that morning already, just another security sweep like protocol demanded. But something made his feet pause, just outside Habitat 9C, the one none of the other officers lingered near. The one with her. He glanced left and right, making sure no one else was watching, and stepped closer to the thick transparent wall. Inside was the enclosure, artificial trees, a pool of shimmering water, and the alien girl sitting cross-legged in the same spot as yesterday. And the day before. She was entirely still, carved from cobalt light and shadows, blue skin glowing faintly under the biodome's filtered sky. Her hair, silver white and braided in strands, draped over one shoulder like flowing silk. The strange leather garment she wore looked half ceremonial, half primitive. Elias wondered if it was all they'd let her keep from her world before they'd dragged her here. Her eyes opened, soft, enormous, luminous, and found him. He exhaled slowly. Every time they met eyes, he felt it again, not fear. Not curiosity. Recognition. He pressed his palm gently against the glass, almost out of instinct. Not protocol. Not reason. Just need. For a moment, she didn't move. Then, like a whisper, she lifted her hand and mirrored his touch on the other side. No words. No sound. Just skin separated by inches and a transparent wall of civilization. Cormac, a voice barked from down the corridor. Elias dropped his hand fast. He turned to see Senior Tech Rains glaring at him, holding a datapad. You're on a schedule, not a date, Rains muttered. It's just a specimen. Don't get sentimental. Elias gave a nod and turned away without a word, but his thoughts stayed behind. Later that evening, back in the security deck, he brought up her file, EX09-2274 beta. No species name. No planet of origin, only unregistered outer drift. Captured during the Tolvanar collapse. Notes. Non-verbal. Non-aggressive. No display of sentience beyond mimicry. He scrolled deeper. Initial classification marked her as near-sapient based on eye-tracking responses and emotional micro-expressions. Later reclassified. How convenient. He leaned back in his chair, jaw tight. Who are you? He muttered. The system offered no answers. Just the cold, clean data of a creature labeled product. The next day, Elias returned earlier than his shift. No armor. No visible scanner. Just himself. She was already there, standing this time. Closer to the glass. Waiting. He tried something different, lifted a marker and wrote on the glass. Can you understand this? Her eyes followed the movement carefully. No response. He added, your name? She didn't flinch, but her hand drifted to hover over the letters. Not touching, just hovering. As if the letters meant something she was trying to remember. Or maybe, reclaim. He tried again. Keela? This time, her lips parted slightly. He couldn't hear anything, but her throat moved like she whispered it back. Keela. That was enough. I knew you weren't just a thing, Elias said softly, not expecting a reply. She tilted her head, watching him. Then she raised one finger and pointed at his chest. He blinked. Me. I'm Elias. She repeated the motion, 2 fingers now, touching her shoulder. It wasn't her language. But it was a beginning. That night, Elias stayed up in his quarters, researching neurological markers in sentient class species. He pulled archived footage of her in the enclosure. He watched hours of it, how she mimicked gestures, tracked every face, sat quietly unless someone screamed near her. She wasn't feral. She was observing. Choosing silence. He couldn't sleep. The next day, Elias didn't ask permission. He walked straight past the other handlers, past the environmental seal, and up to the glass. Keela stood waiting, hands at her sides, eyes already locked on him. He didn't speak this time. Instead, he opened his palm. Slowly. Carefully. She mirrored him, her fingers trembling slightly. Their hands touched again, only the glass between them. But somehow, it didn't feel like a barrier anymore. It felt like a secret. And in that moment, Elias saw not an alien. Not a creature. But someone utterly, achingly alone. Cormac. The voice cut the silence like a knife. Valen Draras stood behind him, hands clasped, lips tight. You're not authorized to linger here. Elias stood upright, wiping the glass quietly. I'm observing behavioral patterns. Under Code 4.2, that falls within. Spare me the regulation. Valen stepped closer. I know your type. You think she's beautiful, so you believe she's worth something. Elias didn't answer. Valen leaned near the glass and sneered. Pretty little eyes, sure. But don't mistake mimicry for mind. The galaxy is full of pretty beasts. Keela stood unmoving, but her eyes flicked to Elias. She understands, Elias said. Maybe not the words. But tone. Presence. She responds. She responds because she's trained. Fear and food teach most things. Elias turned. No. She's aware. You see a cage. I see a prison. Valen's smile faded. Watch yourself. That kind of idealism gets people transferred. Or worse. He walked away without another word. Elias stood for a long moment. Then, without thinking, he placed his palm back on the glass. And waited. Keela returned the gesture instantly. And this time, she didn't look away. The corridors of Xerxes 9 felt narrower the next morning. Elias moved fast, keeping his head down, passing surveillance nodes without pause. The AI wouldn't flag his early presence, he knew how to walk beneath the sensor's notice. He'd been doing it long before he wore a uniform. The security wing was quiet. Lights flickered low in standby mode. But Elias's heart wasn't. He reached the console, typed in his override codes, and accessed a locked archive, EX09-2274 beta neural response logs. It wasn't on the public terminal. This was deeper. Hidden. The biometric readouts were plain. High cognitive reactivity. Dream state cycles identical to Class II sentient races. Emotional patterning. Memory retention. She remembered. She dreamed. She felt. The final report that reclassified her as non-sapient was signed by Valen himself. Elias leaned back, staring at the screen. The edges of something sharp, something illegal, were starting to show. They'd known. They'd hidden it. He closed the file and slid a small device from his pocket, a miniature voice relay unit. Whisper thin, it could be hidden inside a vent with enough power to transmit through enclosure barriers. He'd built it for field ops. Now he'd use it to talk to a girl who might never have heard human language in her life. He stood outside the enclosure 20 minutes later, watching her. Keela. She was sitting near the artificial stream, fingers drawing patterns in the dust beside her. Not mindless loops, symbols. Shapes. Like letters from a language forgotten. He crouched down near the corner of the glass and placed the tiny relay beneath the speaker vent. The station's white noise hum would cover the signal. Then he pressed the button. Keela, he whispered, barely above breath. She froze. Her head turned slowly toward the speaker. Keela. Can you hear me? Her brows furrowed, confusion. Yes, but also something deeper. She moved toward the source, eyes scanning, nostrils flaring slightly like she was trying to scent the sound. He waited. Let her come closer. Finally, her fingers reached the vent. She tapped it once, then looked up at him through the glass. I hear, came the reply. The voice was raw, fragile, shaped by unfamiliar vocal cords. But it was hers. Elias swallowed the sudden lump in his throat. You know words. She tilted her head. Long time. No say. No need. No one listen. He stepped closer. I'll listen. Silence. Then, why? Because you're not supposed to be alone, he wanted to say. Because they put you behind glass like you're a thing, but you aren't. Because I saw your eyes. Instead, he said, because someone should. She moved her hand toward the glass again. He mirrored her. Your name is Keela, he said softly. She nodded once. Keela Ryn. Was, full name. Before. Before what? Her gaze drifted downward. Before sky turned red. Before cages. Before noise. Elias didn't push. She wasn't ready to tell the whole story. But the pieces were forming. Do you know where your people are? He asked. Keela looked around the enclosure, then pointed to the ceiling. Gone. She made a motion across her neck. Dead. Elias stared at her. The idea of someone surviving their species' extinction behind glass, alone, mislabeled, it made his stomach twist. She looked at him again, something pleading in her face. You soldier. He paused. Not anymore. You carry war inside, she said. He smiled faintly. Maybe. Keela touched her chest. Me too. The next 2 nights, Elias came back without alerting anyone. Just him and her, separated by a wall and joined by words. They spoke in broken phrases, her accent thick but steady. She remembered names, her child, her bonded mate, her sister. All gone now. She asked about Earth, about trees, about what a sunset meant when he described the colors. You speak like poet, she said once. I was a killer, he replied. She didn't blink. Poets often are. They shared a long silence after that. Not uncomfortable. Just full. That 3rd night, she had something in her hand. She held it up to the glass. It was a drawing. Crude, childlike. But unmistakable. Herself, inside a square enclosure. And beside her, outside the box, a figure with dark hair and a badge him. Both touching the glass. Both with small stars drawn above. He looked at her, throat tight. Is this a dream? She shook her head. Hope. The moment shattered the next morning. He was summoned to command Deck Beta. Valen waited, arms folded. I know about your little visits, the curator said coldly. Elias didn't flinch. I'm within regulation. Observing specimen behavior is. She's scheduled for auction, Valen interrupted. Elias froze. What? Valen slid a datapad across the table. Special buyer. Want something rare. She goes off station in 2 days. You can't do that, Elias said quietly. There's evidence she's sentient. She speaks. No recordings, Valen said. No logs. Just your word. I can submit an AI-confirmed linguistic test. File a level 5 sentient appeal. That takes weeks. You have 48 hours. After that, she's property again. Valen smiled thinly. You were warned. You got too close. Now step back or be reassigned. Elias left the room in silence. But his blood was fire. That night, Keela was waiting at the glass, but something had changed. Her shoulders were drawn tighter. Her mouth trembled slightly. They take me, she asked. He nodded once. Not if I can stop it. You will try, she said. But they are big. You are alone. Maybe not for long. She reached into her sleeve and pulled out a second drawing. This one was rougher, messier. A door. Broken. A figure stepping through. He looked up at her. Help me, she whispered. The auction docket had been posted. Elias read the notice in silence. Item EX09-2274 beta. Described as a rare specimen from the lost outer drift. Slated for private transfer within 36 hours. The final destination was redacted, but the shipping code matched high-security slave routes often disguised as trade lanes. Elias had seen this before. Once an item was off station, it vanished. There was no appeal. No last-minute audit. Not unless he could prove sentience publicly, before departure. He returned to his quarters and activated his old field AI, a tactical companion from his Marine days, now repurposed for legal strategy. The AI blinked online, projecting blue light into the dark room. Mission, it asked. File a level 5 sentient emergency petition, Elias said. Subject code EX09-2274 beta. Her name is Keela. The AI paused. Insufficient authority for emergency motion. I'm invoking clause 17.11 under precedent law, where misclassification of sentient beings poses risk of permanent exploitation, any former combat officer with an ethics badge may issue override. The AI considered. Risk level, extreme. Mission likely to be flagged. I know. Do it anyway. The AI began its task, weaving evidence from neural scans, linguistic patterning, and video logs Elias had quietly gathered. It would take 12 hours to complete and submit to the Accord's open ledger. Once filed, it would go public, undeniable. He just had to keep Keela safe until then. That night, he approached her enclosure with tension riding up his spine. Keela was pacing. Not in circles, no, her steps were precise, deliberate. She was studying the barrier, fingers brushing the seams. "You know," he said. She turned, eyes hard. "Auction. Like cattle." His throat tightened. "I'm stopping it." "Too slow," she whispered. "They move fast when they fear truth." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small communicator, a backup unit. "I can get inside your enclosure," he said. "I have clearance to run health diagnostics. I just need a reason." Keela stared. "Why?" "So I can speak to you. Touch you. Not through glass. I need the Accord to see who you are. To feel it." She walked slowly toward him, her gaze unblinking. "You risk your place." "Why?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "Because this isn't about rules anymore. It's about you. And what they think they can do to you." She stood just inches from the glass. "You feel fire. Like me. I don't want you to disappear," he said. She pressed her palm to the barrier. "Then burn the cage." The next morning, Elias filed an urgent medical alert in the system. Subject EX09-2274 beta exhibiting signs of psychological degradation. Request for direct evaluation and proximity interface testing. The approval came instantly. No one cared, she was already sold. The station staff had moved on. To them, she was inventory in transit. Elias entered the enclosure under the guise of performing diagnostic scans. A full-body biosuit disguised his features, but she knew it was him. The moment the seal hissed shut behind him, Keela turned and walked toward him, slow, graceful, eyes filled with something almost unbearable. "Is this real?" she asked softly. He reached up and removed the face shield. "It's me." They stood there, only a breath apart. No glass. No rules. Her hand rose. He caught it gently. Her skin was cool, smooth, and trembling slightly beneath his palm. "You're warm," she said. "So are you." He didn't let go. Keela stepped closer. Her face tilted upward, her expression unreadable. "This is what they fear," she whispered. "Connection." "I'm not afraid," Elias replied. She leaned forward slowly until her forehead touched his. Her scent was faint, floral, clean, unfamiliar. Her breath caught in her throat. "This moment," she murmured, "was worth the wait." He didn't speak. Just held her hand tighter. They stood like that until the security timer beeped. But the peace shattered before shift's end. A station-wide alert sounded. Red text scrolled across every terminal. Item transfer accelerated. VIP arrival imminent. The auction ship had arrived early. Too early. Elias burst into the command center. "You can't, she's under ethics review." Valen turned from the control panel, calm as ever. "You tried. I'll give you that." "This is illegal," Elias snapped. "She's cargo," Valen said coldly. "You've forgotten your place." "No. I finally remembered it." Elias reached for his sidearm, he wasn't here to shoot. But he wanted them to know he wasn't bluffing. Guards began to move. Valen raised a hand. "Take him alive." But Elias didn't wait. He moved fast, ducking low, triggering a smoke burst from his belt and vaulting through the side exit. Every corridor turned into muscle memory, he'd memorized the paths that weren't tracked. He reached the habitat ring and slipped into the emergency hatch near Keela's wing. She was already at the door. "They come," she said. "I heard them." "I know. We're leaving." Her eyes widened. "Outside? Out of here?" He nodded. "Now." Together, they ran through the lower tunnels, maintenance shafts too narrow for combat droids, barely lit, filled with dust and coolant fumes. Elias led the way, Keela close behind. Her feet made no sound. She moved like water. At a sealed bulkhead, he pulled out a code spike and jammed it into the control port. "Where does this go?" she asked, panting. "Cargo bay. There's an unmanned shuttle being prepped for the auction goods." We take it. The lock clanked open. They slipped through and froze. Waiting inside was Valen, surrounded by armed guards. He held a stun cannon aimed directly at Elias. End of the road, Valen said. Keela stepped forward, shielding Elias. You do not own me. Valen's brow twitched. She speaks. She always did, Elias growled. Keela's eyes narrowed. You cage beauty because you cannot feel it. Stand down, Valen ordered. Now. Elias raised his hands slightly. Keela did not. Instead, she turned sharply and lunged. Fast as lightning, she slammed into Valen, knocking the cannon wide. A shot rang out and hit the wall beside Elias. Sparks flew. Guards hesitated. Elias moved, tackling one of them, grabbing the fallen weapon. He fired a stun blast and another, dropping 2 men. Keela fought like nothing Elias had ever seen. Fluid, fierce, silent. She used momentum and speed over strength, leaping, twisting, evading. Valen scrambled back, bleeding from a cut on his cheek. You'll never get off this station alive, he spat. Elias leveled the cannon at him. Watch us. They made it to the shuttle, sealed the hatch, and launched in silence. As the stars blurred outside the viewport, Keela slumped into the co-pilot chair, chest heaving. Free, she asked. He looked over. Almost. She smiled faintly. Then we fight again tomorrow. Elias reached over and took her hand. We do. Together. The stars outside the shuttle curved into long silver threads as Elias punched the slipstream drive. A tremor passed through the hull, like a beast shaking off chains. Keela leaned forward, hands gripping the edge of the console. Her breath was shallow but steady. They chase? She asked. Not yet, Elias replied. But they will. Valen won't let this go. She nodded slowly. Her eyes flicked to the viewport. I thought the sky would feel wider. It does, he said, but only once you stop looking behind you. They drifted in open space for an hour, hidden in a dead sensor zone near an asteroid belt. The station's long-range scanners wouldn't reach them here. Elias connected the shuttle's terminal to his old AI. Status on the sentience petition, he asked. The AI responded, filed and active. Public review begins in 4 hours. Accord tribunals are monitoring. Subjects' communication logs included. Keela tilted her head. You recorded me? He turned to her. Only your voice. Your words. The way you spoke them. Will it matter? She asked. It has to. They landed at an outpost near the Legal Accord hub on Valtris 4, a neutral moon known for protecting asylum seekers and whistleblowers. The outpost was carved into black rock, its domes shining under twin suns. Elias carried the authorization chip. Keela walked beside him, no longer behind glass, no longer watched, though her eyes still scanned every shadow. Inside the tribunal's holding bay, a clerk took her name, scanning her vitals. Species, the woman asked flatly. Keela Ryan of the Alari, Keela answered. The clerk hesitated. Then nodded. Proceed. They gave her a room with a bed, food, and clean clothes. Elias sat outside, pacing. You're not going to rest? She asked through the doorway. He stopped. I don't know how to yet. She stepped into the hall, dressed in soft grey fabric, hair braided again, tighter this time. Her posture was different. Still wary, but no longer shrinking. I dreamed I was still in the cage, she said. He looked at her. And now? She touched her chest. I feel everything. Loud. Heavy. Like wind after silence. He reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. We wait, he said. She nodded. I hate waiting. 3 hours passed. Then 4. The tribunal's verdict came as a broadcast. Elias and Keela stood side by side in the viewing chamber. A hologram flickered to life, the seal of the Galactic Accord. Then a mechanical voice read the decision. Subject EX09-2274 Beta, identified as Keela Ryn of the Alari, has demonstrated language capacity, emotional reasoning, trauma retention, symbolic communication, and moral comprehension. As such, She is recognized under Article 7 as a sentient individual. Elias exhaled hard. Keela stood frozen. Effective immediately, all claims of ownership or custody are void. Subject is granted refugee status and full protection under Accord law. Any attempt to recapture will be treated as abduction. The message ended. Keela blinked. I'm free? Elias smiled. Yes. She laughed, quiet at first. Then again, fuller. Like it cracked her ribs open. She reached out and embraced him. No hesitation. No glass. Later that evening, they sat beneath the dome at the top of the outpost, watching the stars ripple beyond the shield. No alarms. No cages. Just breath and time. Keela spoke first. You risked everything. You were worth it. She tilted her head. Even if I had never spoken? Yes. She rested her head on his shoulder. I did not think anyone could care for something broken. You're not broken. She looked up. But I am changed. So am I. He turned to her. What will you do now? She smiled. I want to remember who I was before they put me behind glass. And then? I want to be something else. I'd like to be part of that, he said. Her hand found his. You already are. The next day, Valendraras was arrested by Accord enforcers. The Ari's records of falsified documents, concealed data, and classified sentient suppression charges were enough to bring his empire crashing down. The Xerxes 9 zoo was seized. Its captives were released, one by one, many never knowing how close they came to being lost forever. Keela declined to return. She'd had enough of cages, no matter how gold the bars. Elias turned in his badge. He had no more interest in upholding a system that let people be property. Keela stood beside him as they left the outpost behind, boarding a private ship bound for a lush colony moon where former refugees rebuilt lives. I've never planted anything, she said as they watched the trees roll by on approach. You'll learn. She smirked. You always say that. Because it's true. The night they arrived, they walked under alien trees that glowed faintly under moonlight. Flowers opened as they passed, responding to warmth. It reminded Keela of home. Or what she could still remember. They reached a quiet clearing. She looked up at him. There is no glass. No, Elias said. Just stars. She took his face in her hands. I want to remember this first. Before anything else. He touched his forehead to hers. Then let's make it unforgettable. Their lips met. No command. No desperation. Just choice. Keela wasn't a subject anymore. She was a woman, unowned. And Elias? He was the first man who had ever seen her. Truly.